Hello, welcome everyone. This is Amy, Mystic Rose Tarot. Um, Today is, yesterday, as I'm recording this a day late, is the start of our last decan for the month of Gemini. So this is our third decan, going 20 to 30 degrees, starting June 11th until June 21st. So this is going to take us right past the summer solstice by one day. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this particular decan, the 10 of Swords, the Minor Arcana card of influence for this particular decan. And then I'm going to do a recap like I normally do at the end of our third decans of each astrological month, and just reflect back on the energies from 0 to 10 when we first started to the midpoint of the astrological month to our penultimate, where we are right now, 20 to 30 degrees decan for Gemini. So many of you know, but I just always reintroduce myself with the cards that I work with. I'm working with a base deck, the Unified Esoteric Tarot, which uses a different system for breaking down the planetary influences and the signs that they're in. The Minor Arcana cards still remain the same. They still follow along the lines of the Golden Dawn attributes. But with this particular deck of the Unified Esoteric Tarot, the creator changed the planetary placements. The sign's still the same. We're still in Gemini, of course, but the planets are related differently for each decan. So in relation to the Golden Dawn. So to jump right ahead, we're going to talk a little bit about this particular decan, because this month, for the most part, has been Mercury has been retrograde in Gemini. So people have been sharing experiences, neutral experiences, great experiences, not so good experiences since this retrograde. I'm not going to focus so much on that, but when it comes to retrogrades, I feel to just take everything very slow, because that's what it is. Retrograde, the planet, the energy is, in a sense, moving backwards. And so it's sort of going back to where it started. And once retrograde clears, it goes back to where it is. So energy gets placed in a neutral point. And then when it goes direct, in the following days after it's retrograde, things start kind of calming down a little bit. So with this third decan, with the Unified Esoteric Tarot, card I have here is Uranus and Gemini. And our key card of influence, our keyword of influence, is versatility. And so I'm going to break that down very briefly and then focus on the energy of the 10 of Swords in relation to Uranus and Gemini in relation to this deck. So we have versatility here, which works very well. And Uranus in Gemini is a perfect placement for the planet and the sun, or in the sign. So we have here for versatility, which is something that works and empowers the sign of Gemini, because Gemini is a mutability sign. It's one of adaptability, one where much space is needed to move around with their thoughts and the way they communicate. It involves liberation of the mind and free ways of expressing oneself. Uranus is associated with the sign of Aquarius. So Aquarius, we know, is out-of-the-box thinking, quick changes, seeing things in a different perspective, neither up, down, left, right. It's just they see things in such a different way that it really opens people's eyes once it is expressed with the sign of Aquarius. So Uranus gives this freedom, gives this expansion, the space to move around where you need to. And so with Uranus and Gemini and versatility, and working with the Ten of Swords, this gives the opportunity for that any challenges or fears that were experienced anytime during the month of Gemini, this Decan, this time period from June 11th to the 21st, gives us the opportunity to switch things around, be more open-minded, and looking beyond the details of the issues that have happened and just moving past these issues. Now, that may seem a little bit irresponsible, but keep in mind we are working with the planet of freedom and liberation, and Gemini need to think things out in a different way where it doesn't really hold them down. So they don't want to get lost in thoughts. That's almost in a sense for Virgo, but here with Gemini, we want to really move past this. We want to deal with the situation reasonably, logically, communicate the best way that we can to move past this. So we need this versatility and this open-minded, radical way of being liberated from the perspective of Gemini. So when it comes to dealing with conflict and things of mental challenges, they work through it. You know, they rationalize it. They don't put so much of the heart into it. They just put their mind to it, find what the issues were, break it down mentally, and then just to move on. And they want to do it very quickly. They want to just move on so they could get on to the next part of their journey, the next part of their experience. So this is what we get more or less with the versatility aspect and influence of this card with the Unified Esoteric Tarot. Just the quick way of just getting right to the center of what's going on mentally, breaking it down and releasing it, moving along and going to the next phase. Now, the Ten of Swords overall, its meaning. Everyone knows the Ten of Swords who's been practicing the tarot. And there's different perspectives and depictions of the Ten of Swords, and that's why I do these astrological decans with different cards to show the positives, the negatives, when this card comes up. So the Ten of Swords is normally seen as a very aggressive ending. It could be a violent end. It could be a painful end. It could be an end that's just waiting on you, like wait, and just not letting you move past those situations. But the Ten of Swords is just that. You have to acknowledge, you have to realize that you need to move beyond those situations and don't let it overwhelm yourself, your well-being, your inner self, your outer self, affecting those around you. Again, this is something that could have happened very suddenly. I will just bring one of these cards out. There you go. So this is something that could have happened just suddenly. A whole bunch of issues came up, or something that's been building up over time. And that's how I feel the Ten of Swords is. If you haven't worked through the issues from the Two of Swords to the Nine of Swords, and they're still not being resolved, this is ultimately what can happen. You're just not dealing with the situation in the most proactive way needed. So but when this card comes, this is giving you this option to realize how much longer you want to stay feeling like this. And knowing that the suffering can end, it is up to your choice to decide how you want to start removing all of these swords, all of these weights, all of these heavy thoughts and challenges. And know by removing those, you could start giving that time for self-healing and ease back into your path that you were on before, until everything just started falling into a different direction. The thing that we have to avoid here with the Ten of Swords is allowing this. I mean, here, and I'm going to explain about this card in relation to the Ten of Swords in another deck. I'm feeling with this card, this is not moving. Okay, the weight is too much. It's killing the soul, and it's stunting the progress of moving forward. We have thorns here, but we see some leaves. We're seeing the potential. We're seeing that there is that means of healing and resolving these issues. So moving ahead with this. So whenever there's a heavy card, a negative card, an ominous card, we got the Tower, we get the Devil, we get the Swords, most of those suits there, the Death card, all of those. When we get those cards, I'm having to explain to people, I want them to understand that this is a sign of removal, of change, of moving forward, pulling those shackles away, pulling out those swords, pulling anything that's holding you back. With the Tower card, it's very abrupt. It's Mars energy, and it's very aggressive, and it's very fast. So those are signs to embrace and know that you have that potential to make those shifts, to release, let go, and to start healing. So to go right into this, with the Oak, Ash, and Thorn and Pagan Otherworlds, the card that I was just showing you here, this is from the Pagan Otherworlds. And then here is the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. And I have to say, with my decks and seeing so many decks online, I think this is a wonderful, and please don't take this out of context, I think this is a wonderful depiction of the Ten of Swords, because it is showing an ending. And, unfortunately, it's at the loss of the raven. But when you look closely at this, we're seeing the release, and the release is going into butterflies. We're showing everything that was built up in that cocoon is now coming to an end, and it's time to release, and it's time to heal, and it is time to move on. And this is the wonderful aspect of, or example of, a card showing the positive out of a hard outcome or negative outcome. Here, it's just like you're letting go. It's like, okay, the only way to deal with this pain is to let go and to relieve these issues, and being mindful of this, and knowing that there is that growth to move ahead and to start healing. But here we have the opposite. Okay, like I was saying, we have the weight. It's killed the soul here. Okay, we have the skull. The skull also represents death, life, starting over again. But the energy that I'm feeling with this card is more on the heavier side. This is just my interpretation. So I'm feeling, because it has, broken down the soul to where it's no longer existing. In a sense, that's a good place to be, because then you can start opening up and moving into the next phase. This is, I think I came across an article not too long ago. Someone was saying that the Ten of Swords is the ultimate of all the cards in the tarot. This is as bad as it can get, and it can only get better. And I totally agree. So the other cards that I have here are going to show some of the processes of how to move on from this pain, from this anguish, from this suffering. And it's also trust. It's also like, okay, all right, stop fighting. You have to stop fighting and challenging the suffering, because it's just making it more difficult, and it's wearing down the soul, the self, even more so. Again, to where it's just like this. And in a sense, the suffering ends up being a good lesson, because it shows that you do have to break down the self at certain times, because there's all this buildup. And so it's like fire. To destroy something that is old, you have to burn it. You have to end it, and end its life source, and to have it regenerate again, but regenerate in a way where we could start healing and moving ahead. So with that, the transformation starts by embracing the loss and the weaknesses that have occurred, the pain and suffering. It's like holding all that in and then just like letting it out. We could start moving ahead. Now, the two cards that I have here are showing the spiritual aspects of healing. And this is dealing more with the element of air than with swords. Okay, swords we know deals with the mind. Cutting through double edge, it's, you choose which side you're going to use to cut through and get down to the core of what the issue is. Here, we have the energy of air. Okay, it's around us every millisecond. And it is empowering, but it can also be destructive as well if the air does get toxic. But here, the two cards I'm going to be working with to discuss is this is the Witch's Wisdom. This deck just spoke out to me earlier this week, and I felt when it came time to doing this third deck and then looking at this 10 of air, I thought, you know what, this would be a wonderful pro to discuss with the 10 of swords energy, the negative aspect of it, and positive. So here with the 10 of air, with the Witch's Wisdom by Phyllis Carrot, we're seeing here the connection to the spiritual divine. And in doing so, that's where healing becomes. So here, we're looking more inward. The other two cards are more of the external influences that played a part and just really started to wear down physically, mentally, emotionally. And once those elements at the conscious level have been disrupted, they start breaking down. They start affecting you at an internal level. So when you're at this point, this is where we have to start finding means to heal all the toxicity that we have. So with this, the Witch's Wisdom, we're seeing more of actions of unity and harmony beyond the self at a collective level. And this card here is representing the key word that's used to describe this card is murmurations. And this is a phenomenon. If you go online or if you've never seen or heard of a murmuration, and murmuration is spelled M-U-R, see murmur, M-A-T-I-O-N, murmuration. And what this is I'm not going to say it's a phenomenon because it does happen, these are starlings, and these happen with certain types of groups of birds where they collectively get together. And there's thousands. You see them sometimes from miles away, getting together, and they're flocked, and they're flying in sequence. And from a distance, it looks like it's some weird cloud phenomenon that's moving back and forth, going up and down, and it's just amazing to see this. I've been lucky enough to see a few murmurations in the area that I live in, and it's just wonderful. And it changes all the time. So the purpose of this card is finding those in the collective sense that are in the same sync as you are. They are finding that mysterious aspect of moving together and creating something very powerful, either as a group or within yourself. These murmurations are all these creatures working together to create a wonderful experience that for them, they just feel is natural, but for others, it's something very fascinating. So again, here, it's connecting with others that are liberated and discovering the mystery of divine love. Now, this isn't so much what they're doing, but their energy is representing this. They're working together again as a collective, and they're all on the same page, and they're moving in sync. And that's how we should be doing our self-healing. We should be feeling connected with all aspects of who we are, and moving this energy. So the element of air becomes the influence of a spiritual awakening, a spiritual self-realization. And this is what I'm going to talk about in the next two cards. It's like, how do we reach this? How do we reach healing from such tragic loss? And it's just these actions needed to find self-love, self-care, and working together. And working with people, communicating with people who are like-minded. They're on the same journey. They're trying to heal themselves as well. So with the next card here, similar vein. This is from the Dreams of Gaia. This is 10 of Air. And 10 of Air is of spiritual knowledge. And having that understanding and self-realization of who you are. Releasing any outside influences. This is a card of cosmic higher knowledge. It's separating, letting go of the ego. The ego is what's causing the pain. It's causing you to feel, but also to think as well. And it's embracing who we truly are. It is the merging of opposite energies, light, dark, masculine, feminine energy, so on and so forth, to get to the center of the soul. We're all made up of all these energies, so we need to merge these two. We have to understand the energies of the masculine side, the dark side, the feminine side, the light side, the dark side, so on and so forth, and working with those energies, moving ever so closely to reaching to who we really are. And it's being honest with ourselves. And once we connect to ourselves, what we really would like to be, either more happier, more content, more self-satisfied, that's the potential. And by centering yourself and working with these opposing energies, you get a complete balance. You get a harmonizing aspect of the mind and the heart. And this is where the higher divine comes in. And it's just, again, you're starting with the mind in this case. You're looking for that wisdom. You're looking for that guidance. And in a sense, this is taking the esoteric approach to mastering and understanding the attainment of the true self. So yeah, this card's a little bit on the heavier side spiritually, but it is that awareness that many who are having a spiritual practice would like to have. It's having that awakening either at a great level or just an understanding. And then once that understanding comes in, you can start that healing. In fact, the healing is part of the process. And once that healing has been done, okay, I'm going to show here. You can see the opposite energies here. Okay, so here we have the finality of death, but we have the transformation that is potentially up ahead. And this is the process that we see going through this transformation. This is the internal, and this is the external. External is the swords, putting the end to it. The butterflies, metamorphosis, transformation, and then that gets internalized here, for example, with the 10 of air. And having that spiritual lightness, that freedom, the liberation, similar to the Uranus and Gemini. Just freedom to communicate, but also to let go and to move on. And with that ending comes having a different perception on things. The way that you perceive things will be completely different. Things won't feel as heavy, or possibly won't feel heavy after going through such a traumatic experience or letting go of all baggage. Things feel lighter because you're not carrying it anymore. The next card, here it comes. People know that I work with this deck, with my Decans. Okay, this is the Tarot of the Holy Light. So here is the 10 of Swords. Now, with the Tarot of the Holy Light, the creator, Christine Payne-Taylor, brings in the energies of the air signs. So it's Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And showing those aspects of those signs in the element of air, how they deal with pain and choices. And basically, this card is the outcome of choices and actions that were made of one's free will. This is what we do every day. We can feel like we're doing everything good, and then something happens to come our way. Obviously, that wasn't our free will, but a challenge came to us. And our choices, are we going to deal with it? And if we're going to deal with it or work through it, how are we going to do it? Are we going to negate it and walk away from it? Or are we going to meet it and break it down and understand? And any pain or loss that comes from it, we work with it. And so the thing that's wonderful here with this card is we see the steps, because we take the vitality of the sun. The sun is a life force. This is what gets us moving. This is what gets the actions going. And then with those actions and the experiences that we get, we start moving it to the heart. And so with the heart, we come releasing it outward. So we get the sun's energy, expansiveness, moving these actions into the heart emotionally, how we're feeling about it. And then the result is how we handle that situation, and we release it outward into the conscious realm. But it's also a paradox, because if we're putting, like I mentioned earlier, if we are being weighted down, if we are fighting for so long to work through the pain and the suffering, and we're causing more anguish to the individual self, we're killing the soul. We're doing something counterintuitive. We're fighting, thinking that we're going to remedy the situation, but we're actually losing losing the battle, we're losing the fight, and it's getting exhaustive, and you're not even seeing things. Your perception's lost because you're battling so much that basically the self is dissipated. And in turn, by doing that, you've missed the opportunity to reach your full potential of moving past this, because you put all your energy into fighting and going against this. I'm going to show here a close-up. I don't know how well this is going to focus, but here we sort of have, you can't see it too well. Here we have an individual that's split up, masculine, feminine energy, but it's all in one body. And we're seeing how both of these energies were utilized, but the swords eventually came in. I'm moving closer. There you go. I moved in. You used all this energy, and eventually it was too much. The actions weaken the body, and it weakened the mind, and therefore that energy, the conscious self, just basically ended itself. And here was the potential. You have all this different energy to show growth. And so once that is lost, I'm going to reverse this so you can see the opposite. Okay, we have all this action, all this energy that's being put in, but it's not going anywhere. And then what happens is, if you get this backwards, I'm going to use this here. There's nothing. We have the moon there, and this could be the planet that's right by the moon, the planet Earth, but there's nothing. There's no life. There is a little bit of remnants of what could have happened, but it wasn't fully recognized or achieved. And then we get this negative aspect of killing our own soul, because we're not giving the space, we're not giving the energy to really look through things carefully. We're just fighting because that challenge is just too much. And that's what breaks down that Ten of Swords to such a difficult end. So the best way to use the Ten of Swords as guidance is knowing that you've been liberated from suffering, pain. Could be long-term. I almost want to say that the Ten of Swords could represent long-term suffering. But it can also come up unexpectedly, but the velocity of everything happening is very overwhelming, and it makes it very quick, and the suffering seems endless. But put faith, okay? We want to have faith into healing from the wounds. Trust whatever lies ahead will be a greater experience, because you've gained that knowledge from the past. And any challenges that came from it can be applied in the future if needed. So that's what I focus more on when I do readings of any sort. If there's something on the negative side, I put in the potential outcome for something better. Here again is unity, working for a common good. Harmonizing, working in unison. And here, the merging of opposite energies to get to the core self, to really understand and heal. And it's there. And we also have the butterflies here that we see in the oak, ash, and thorn. So we're seeing that metamorphic shift, this lightness. We go from someplace dark and heavy to something light and pure and clean. So again, the versatility that we get here, the adaptability, the open-mindedness of the Uranus and Gemini works with the Ten of Swords here because it's giving you a different perspective to just, put that conscientious effort to really think about what's happened, any of the pain and whatnot, and to work through it. But don't be stuck in it. Don't be fighting it for too long. 'Cause then we get the weakening and the ending of the soul in a very tragic way, in a very hard way. And again, that's fine. But in this case, we want to, these cards here, these two particular cards, are almost means to, it's almost like a preventative. There's some conflict that you feel may be coming in. There is a means to possibly prevent those actions from not so much happening, but at least easing and working through them by using yourself fully and immersing yourself, but in a lighter sense. Uranus and Gemini. Lightness, liberation, free-spirited open-mindedness towards the situation. Not like, oh my God, this is so much. No. Open, change the perspective. And see things in a clearer way. This is almost about how to resolve the issues that are happening with the Ten of Swords, and then you can move on. And you can move on potentially with less healing time. Because you faced those fears, you had that courage. Even though it's still there, you took a few wounds, it's not going to take you as long to heal because you took those steps to move forward. You're brave to face this. So that's with the Ten of Swords for our third decan, 20-30 degrees for the month of Gemini from June 11th to the 21st. Okay, so we talked about being open-minded and dealing with these issues, but being, forthright about it to move on. Let's go back to our previous decan from June 1st to June 10th. Our second decan, which was with the Unified Esoteric Tarot. It's Venus and Gemini. So with Venus and Gemini, the key word here was exchange of information. It's just knowing how to communicate and also facing our fears. Okay. Because the Nine of Swords is just that. We are in the crux of the situation of fear and challenges. And how are we handling it? Okay, are we allowing the thoughts and that heavy energy just to weigh us down? I mean, here we have the beautiful swan representing our potential beauty and purity, but it's not manifesting fully. It's not moving, or it had already gotten to that state, and then now it's facing a current challenge, and it's allowing it to weigh itself down. Very similar to the Ten of Swords, but the Ten of Swords, we see that outcome and the choice that was made from the Nine to the Ten of Swords. So how do we communicate and work through these fears? And here with the nine of air, it's just connecting to yourself, being honest. When you're facing fear, the first part of communication that you should have outside of anyone else is with yourself, is honesty. Really address how you're feeling about the situation. And then in this card here, we're working from the inside out. Okay, so we're seeing that resolvement that's starting to take place. You're feeling that connection to who you are, to move out of that situation. Or you choose to feel, being targeted in all different directions. Even in your own home, you're feeling unsafe, you're feeling insecure, because you're allowing those fears, those challenges to overwhelm you. Okay. And again, I know this is easier said than done, but there are many experiences of people who've faced their deepest fears, and they've moved on from it. And when they realize in the process that the fears that they had were coming from a place that was only within themselves and not really from other people, other outside sources can enhance that. Okay, outside sources can amplify what you're feeling fear-wise and conflict-wise, but you're allowing that mindset to have that happen. And so it's really important to have that strength of will. That's where the 9 and 10 come in, that strength of will, WILL, to stand up and take action, to get to the source, to the understanding. The 9 of Swords is just that, how it is of communication. It is Venus and Gemini with this card, but it's showing in what ways do we communicate, and how honest we are. And again, if there is anyone who is dealing with fear issues, and it's going beyond the cards, depression, severe depression, mental anguish, things that, again, any form of divinatory practice cannot remedy. I myself, and I know others in the tarot community, I ask as well, to go beyond the cards and seek professional help. There are people out there that are there to listen. And so don't rely so much on the cards for some form of medicinal healing. If it's not doing you of service, this is time where you need to go outside and get some guidance in that direction. Okay, and then let's go to the first decan. I have to emphasize that, because we're going through this part of the swords that is very heavy for a lot of people, and we're not going to be revisiting the swords again until the fall of Libra, and so we're going to start that journey again. But let me digress. Going to our first decan. Okay, this is from May 22nd. There you go, to May 31st. And the first decan normally rules the sign's planet, which is Mercury and Gemini. And what I mean by that is Mercury rules the sign of Gemini. And here we have the 8 of Swords. So we're seeing curiosity. So we're going backwards here. We're retrograding, in a sense, with these cards. And we're seeing curiosity deals with wanting to know more, wanting to understand, gaining knowledge, asking questions. But as I mentioned, we are Mercury and Gemini, which is going to be ending in about a week or so. I think we have a week and a few days left. So we're still going through it. But think not so much that we are in a planet that's retrograding in a particular sign where they both rule and work together. just be a little bit more mindful during the retrograde of any activity that's happening either within yourself or outside, communications that you are witnessing that could possibly be affecting you for whatever reason. Listening to conversations, the way people communicate too. I've noticed for the last few weeks with this Mercury and Gemini, there's been little hiccups with me when it comes to communicating, like this right now, lost for words and just trying to get things into clarity. But I'm feeling good because we just had the solar eclipse, and I'm feeling a little bit more of a relief slowly from it. But we're still Mercury retrograde, and that's totally fine. So curiosity, knowledge, understanding. And this is with the Eight of Swords. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these because I want to keep this somewhat short. So it's how we communicate. Okay. It's the knowledge that Mercury and Gemini have, wanting to gather a whole bunch of information and understanding. And with this, with the Eight of Swords, this is where the challenge comes in, because this is from the Dream Keepers Tarot by Liz Houston. We are trying to get the heart and mind to listen to each other. But in this case, when we are feeling that buildup of an overactive mind and conflicts and anything, we start seeing these swords, building up. And in this card here, we have the wings that can free us away from the situation. Our heart is exposed, but we're not seeing it. We're not connecting to it because we're allowing all of this energy to come and take us over. And the same here. And interesting enough, if you look closely, this is Ash Thorn. We have the heart that's exposed on this raven, and it's wrapped up in barbed wire, and it feels like it's overwhelming. There's nowhere to go, can't fly. So what can you do in this situation? It's just to be still and to make this choice of how you're going to move on from this. I'll show you this card here as well. Okay. Eight of Air, Dreams of Gaia. Here we're seeing a conflict with the ego and versus the spiritual side of who we are. It's making the choice and finding which direction is going to be best for us. And here we have the knowing, the knowledge, the cosmic knowledge there. But right now, everything is stagnant. We can't move because you're crippled in this fear. You're crippled in this unknown, and you're letting that aspect hold you down. So this is where the Eight of Swords is. But acknowledging what's going on. But in these cards here, the eyes are covered. They just cannot see. They do not want to see what lies ahead. This is from the Force of Enchantment. So we have an individual here that's just barbs are all wrapped around, cut, torn. Here again is the example of fighting, trying to move. And the more you move, the more you fight, the more you're getting hurt. So with the Eight of Swords and curiosity is just taking that moment of stillness of what's going on, but to start thinking, start applying what needs to be done to move yourself from that situation. Letting go certain aspects of who we are in the conscious realm and just connect inside Start moving this energy, start moving it in a direction that you can move ahead. Okay, so that was the first decan, May 22nd to the 31st of May for the month of Gemini. So we have this progress, we have the curiosity, we have the exchange of information, we have the versatility, Mercury in Gemini, Venus in Gemini, Uranus in Gemini throughout these decans. And ending with the freedom and liberation of any discomfort and challenge that we have. Let it go. Be free. These decans with 8, 9, and 10 of swords shows the progression of a paralyzing situation and how we choose to work with it and to move from it. And again, it's the free will and how we use our free will when it comes to our life. Think about all the actions that you've done in the past and where they've been beneficial to you and where some have actually fallen you back. We're not perfect. And I think that's another thing with the sword suit is a reminder we're not perfect. Okay, we're going to make choices. They're not going to be the best choices or the right choices, but the whole idea is learning and moving from it. So that's what we're going to do with our last decan here is moving and healing. Taking that acknowledgement of what's going on and being honest with yourself. And communicate with yourself in such a way that you can bring in love and healing. Remember those butterflies to start transforming, to start metamorphing into your greatest potential self. And that's ongoing. We'll take a few steps forward, a few steps back, so on and so forth. But as long as we are making these steps forward, moving ahead, it's a lifelong journey. So that's the reading for our third decan and recapped on the second and first decan for the month of Gemini. So June 22nd is where we move into, we'll be in the summer solstice officially. And then we're going to be moving into the sign of Cancer. So we're going to work with the elements of the cups, which will be 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to move from the mind to the heart. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect the mind and the heart as not separate entities, which they are, but to harmonize with each other so that we can really work through anything that comes our way in balance. And that's hard. It's, self-mastering, but if you can achieve that balance, there's so much ease when it comes to situations and working with that. So that's where we'll be. So June 22nd or the 23rd, I was a day late with this one. I'll be back with our first decan for the month of Cancer, and that'll be the 2 of Cups. Any questions, comments, feel free to leave them here here on YouTube. I have an article. I haven't really been promoting this very much. I have the full article of more or less what I've been talking about on my website if you want to read it. And I have the link in my website to this video here. So if people don't see this, they can catch it through my website, and then on Instagram, I'm doing a post of this. So yes, let me know. I'm available for readings. I do my live readings once a week, and I'll be posting videos throughout the week when I can. Schedule wise, it's kind of hard to predict when I'm going to do something, but for the most part, I have some ideas. I just got to make them happen. So that's it. Have a wonderful week, everyone. This was the reading for the third decan of June 11th to the 21st, focusing on Uranus and Gemini, the planetary and sign influences, both air elements, and with the Minor Arcana card of influence, the 10 of Swords for this third decan, wrapping up the month of Gemini. All right, I will see everyone soon. Please keep in touch. I look forward to hearing from you soon.